Well, hello and welcome back to the iHealth channel and iHealth Radio. Tonight is the sequel for the Garrison Show or the Garrison Hour with Gabriel Garrison himself again with us with his wisdom and very unique angle and perspective. So last couple of shows were very interesting. We talked a little bit about subconscious consciousness and a lot of different things, the power of thinking. And today we're going to be surprised a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit of a different angle. Again, something new, something exciting. And let's take it from there. And, Gabriel, how are you? Welcome back.
Good. Hello, Hurricane. Thank you for our dialogue and the possibility to continue sharing some ideas which may be of assistance to somebody at some point. Today, I would like us to address little known concept called the learned helplessness. What do you think learned helplessness may mean?
So we learn bad habits. Basically, we
Exactly.
learn the bad things and we assume that they're good things, and we just get adjusted and accustomed, and we're stuck with them. And until somebody wakes us up, we're not there.
Absolutely.
I don't know if that was the
Abs-
decision, but that's what it means to me.
yes,
Audience, if you're
yeah.
listening, maybe this is a question that you have to answer.
Yes. So learn helplessness. We usually assume that people learn useful things, being helpful, being skilled, going to school to learn some sort of degree with some sort of professional capacities. At the same time, we also may learn helplessness. When we are taught that we are victims, when we are taught that there is no hope, it's the big dream of dictators and individuals who want to abuse other individuals. They cannot do it simply at all times, 24 hours, by directly forcing individuals to relent. So, what they are doing then is that they are trying to inculcate in the individuals the idea that they are inferior. And it's a good thing to be accepted by the whomever would be the master in the process. This is a learned helplessness paradigm, and we can address a little bit how the positive, the helpful learning may happen so as to counter those who are trying to teach us learned helplessness. So there are three factors which create our understanding of what's going on uh, outside us and inside us, really, in terms of how we think. The first one is related to facts, right? Facts. What are facts, Hurricane? Mr. Cuomo keeps saying he's talking about facts. What are facts, do you think?
Oh, I mean, I would say concrete evidence, things that are tangible that we can define mathematically and we can, I guess, account for and understand.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what the definition of it is. If facts are based on experiments, and the experiments in the Newtonian physics and also in quantum science, they are essentially addressing the common trends between electronic photons and matters uh, in their interaction. And is there any predictability to that, or is everything chaotic, right? So facts would be objective um, statements and observations. So if I say it rains, that would be a fact, right? So that would be the objective aspect of the observation. The second aspect in our understanding are the interpretations or the interpretation of the facts. So how would you define interpretation, Harki?
Well, it would be the personal opinion on how they perceive, how we perceive a certain fact or certain, I guess, context or any type of information.
Exactly. So if I say it rains, which makes me happy, then the happy part would be the interpretation, the subjective aspect of the statement, it rains, which makes me happy. Very often we assume, we reverse the value. So we assume that an objective or a fact, a neutral situation triggers by default a certain kind of feelings and reactions to it. And that, of course, is not the case. The facts, the substances are neutral until we give them a positive or a negative interpretation. So the very same rain, right, which makes me happy, could make somebody sad at the very same time, same place, right?
Yeah, well, it depends. If you have a drought, rain will make people happy. If you have a flood, rain will make you very sad and upset. So it's also, depends on the circumstances and the environment where that rain is happening or that fact is taking place.
Right. So we may think that. And there is apparently at some point some minority who begs to disagree with the majority in terms of whether rain makes one happy or sad, right? The one aspect that you are talking about, which is measurable, is of course the rain, the quantity of it, the timing, the place, the effects on agriculture and such. Um, the other aspect is I don't care if it's drought outside. I have air conditioning in the home, and I just don't want the rain to soil my shoes. You see, so you see how this goes.
I know. Well, again, but you're right. It's interpretation, right? So and that's for a lot of things, right? People have, we always say opinions, right? About everything, and sometimes they may be valid, they may not be valid. To them, it's validated, but it may be contradicting to the common or what we call the normal. And then
Right.
people will be philosophically stating, what's the normal? What's normal?
Exactly.
Not normal thing.
Exactly. Yes. So the reality is, according um, um, to quantic science, is not that the reality influences our perception, but that our perception influences our reality, including at the material level. So there were interesting studies, Hurricane, done on the very DNA material of human beings. So there were donors from whom was prelevated some sample of their DNA. And the donors were in California, and their DNA was shipped to New York. And the DNA sample was observed as the donors were exposed to what we would consider to be initially a bad or hatred based or aggressive, resentful, triggering negative ideas, right? Some horror movies, violence of abuse, accidents, blood, guts, and the works, right? And what the scientists noticed, much to their surprise, was that at the same time and at the same place, when the stressing or stressful ideas were exposing the donors, and therefore it triggered some sort of stress and sadness and anger and cringing. Their sample of DNA on the West Coast, their spiral of their DNA sample closed. In other words, it got stressed, constricted, it closed. And then they switched the focus of the visual aids and auditory aids, movies and such, to exposing the donors to loving, good, caring, forgiving, musical, exciting ideas and or visual triggers. And then the donors, most of them anyway, responded by relaxing, by being happy and such. And they noticed that the very same DNA spiral of these individuals on the East Coast, while these individuals were exposed to these ideas on the West Coast, the spirals of the DNA open. So they relax. So that was the big surprise. Did you know about this?
I mean, no, no, this is news. Well, I know a little bit that DNA is, it's more than what we think, and it does have other type of traits and things like that that have been identified. I mean, there's so many discussions about some DNA parts of it that actually controls even the emotion piece and so on and so forth, and how you behave based on a lot of things. So, I mean, I've even heard the religious DNA component. And I'm not making light of it. I mean, I can still believe in that. I mean, when you go beyond the obvious, I mean, there's more to things, and we've talked about that before. But the interesting is that, to your point, I mean, whatever they've been subjected to had an impact to the core. I mean,
To the core, like literally, physically to the core
and
of it,
which is our built-in blocks and how we function. So, uh,
which incidentally was separated and shipped on the other side of the country.
see, that's what I'm not getting. So, was that part of the experiment, or was that an error?
No, it was the experiment. Just because the idea was if there is continuity through the electromagnetic field um, between the donor and the sample, then what's going to happen if we are true to our paradigm about this continuity through energy of the matter, even when it's separated. So they found this to happen. So when the individual was stressed, thoughts, by the way, these were not stress related triggers based on reality where somebody was being beaten, right? Or tickled or something. These were make believe
Control.
images. Yeah. And there is a side note, there is an interesting concept in the human mind called suspended disbelief. So suspended disbelief is when I suspend my own disbelief of a reality which I know to be fake so that I can appreciate the idea about that fake reality in one form or another, which is why if it is a soft touching um, song, something that would be a tearjerker, even if I know the singer doesn't necessarily at that point in time have the heart broken, I'm still going to cry because the song is so tender. If I watch Blood and Guts, even if they are made out of ketchup, and I know those are actors and are going to laugh all the way to the bank after the movie because it's no tragedy there, right? The suspended disbelief system in us allows us to experience a fake reality while knowing it is fake and yet choosing for a time being to assume it is true. So that's what happened with the images triggering happy and or sad images. So they were fake. However, because the individuals, the donors, had chosen to believe, to buy into the narrative of those movies, they triggered their DNA, including the one that was detached from them, to react accordingly. And this is very important because what is it when somebody has nourishes positive thoughts such as forgiveness and loving and caring, then the DNA is going to relax, is going to become flexible, is going to become more mobile. The circulation in terms of blood and ideas and oxygen and motion is going to be increased. And that really is life, isn't it? Um, Life. And again, it's not based on the facts, on the reality of the situation. It is based on the interpretation of those facts, which trigger then our interests or reactions or responses to it. This is very interesting because it really goes back to our 50, 10, 40% model of influencing our lives. 50% genetics, 10% only outside factors, and 40% perception. Um, what do you think?
To be honest with you, I mean, it's amazing how when most of us will not connect the dots and put all these things, we see the obvious, But when you go to like the quantum and you go to like, a different level and energy, and you connect that to the biological stuff and the actual psyche and all that, I mean, it becomes a very interesting topic. And it's like, again, we call genetic code, right? So it determines how we behave. And it is subject to what we talked about the last time, to influences. And then thus you have, interpretation and reaction. And I think that's exactly what this is about. And
Exactly.
we all experience it, and you and I had talked about the idea of reflecting on things. And again, I mean, hopefully people are watching or listening today or any other time this show. I mean, it's always, I would always recommend, and I recommend this when I talk to friends, you got to start thinking about things deeper than what they are. I mean, you got to see beyond the obvious and the logic. I mean, there's more than logic. Sometimes things you can't even explain, by the basics that we understand. I mean, I think we had that conversation about the power of the brain. We don't use much of it, not even a small percentage of our brain capacity. We can do a lot. I mean, and that's the other thing. So it's even thinking, we think more 2D, 3D tops. And, there's so many multiple dimensional, ways of, thinking. And we see that in science now and in how some of the things that are being used in technology and in even biology, science, medicine. It's all crazy stuff that that exists, but people are almost unaware of. I mean, a lot of people, I would say 90%, at least that's my observation, or at least my opinion. Talking about opinion,
Yeah.
you know, they walk their life, they live their life happy, and they're not really taking it to the next level. And but that's okay. I mean, not everybody's going to be thinking science or logic or beyond. It's confined to whatever their environment and what their needs are, and that's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you start going beyond and wondering about anything, I mean, I it's funny because I watch a lot of fiction, science. I'm all over the place. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
and it's funny because when you look at some of the fiction we had in the 50s and the 60s and 70s, today some of the stuff that was fiction is reality. And I'm talking technology and even look, I mean, we're zooming right now. you know,
Yes.
we're two states apart. There's all kind of stuff that we can relate to in terms of technology. But that's the things are changing, but they have rules and they have things behind them: physics, mathematics, genetics. There's all this stuff that's behind the scenes that we may not know or have control over. We still are trying to understand it. Even our top scientists all over the world, they still are learning certain things day in day out. The knowledge that we have is limited, and the reason I mentioned fiction is because when you're thinking about aliens, and we always think about them as being the more advanced civilization in the movies. That's how they portray them. And there are
Right.
parts that say, well, if there is, maybe it's going to be like an amoeba. It will be just a small little, life on Mars, which is not going to be any relevant. But we don't know that. So the idea is knowledge can be a lot more um, tangible and deeper. And again, we're not even scratching the surface. And if we go back in time, and you and I, we've talked about time and history, if you look at the progression, even it's funny because I had told you I worked at Disney, and everybody knows this. I mean, there's the big ball in Disney, the Earth, right? So you go in there, and it takes you around the history of mankind, pretty much, and you can see the progression of science and knowledge from the ancient times to today, right? And even it shows you some of the futuristic stuff at that time when they designed it. So that's actually where we are today. And then when we see we think about the future, thinking about flying cars and people, that are like what do you call it, like hybrid machine man. AI is actually a big thing to think about right now. We're talking about the movies like Terminator and stuff. With future, travel to the to the past. All these concepts, they are concepts and they may be fiction, but there's actually science to provide documentation and proof that it can be. I mean, even time relativity, time travel. Yes, we might not travel back in time, but we can certainly speed up. I mean, if you really get enough particles in a very high speed, you can get close enough. They actually have demonstrated that close to the speed of light, and I mean, look at the shuttle. I mean, it goes around the Earth in about an hour and I think 45 minutes, whatever it goes around, an hour and a half, I think, exactly to go around the globe. Yet, if you have to fly from one side from the States to Australia, 17 hours. So it's all depending on the speed, where you are, and it's all relative. Also, if you travel in the speed of light, for example, and you come back, you would probably be younger than the folks that actually you left behind, and they'll probably
Yes.
get old. So these are scientific facts, and there's everything applies. When you have gravity versus no gravity, and that's what a lot of these experiments are when they go up to the space station, for example. So I'm going a little bit outside of our topic, but I think it's all coming back to the facts, the science,
Yes.
genetics,
Yes.
and where we are in terms
Yes.
of knowledge today. So again, I mean, these are some of the facts that I'm aware of, and I always look at these things and connect them somehow, and it does feed into your psychology. It does feed into your outcome, how you behave in life, how you proceed in life, how you perceive things, and how you influence life and others around you. So it's a little bit of a soup, with a lot of different things in it. It's like a buffet of things that you can pick from. And it's ingredients of a formula of a mathematical situation that you can think about.
Yeah.
That's really what I can relate to some of the conversation we had right now earlier about those facts and how they interpret it and the genetics part of it.
Right. So it's important. Absolutely. Now, the learned helplessness is based on one perception or misperception. And that is the idea that I cannot help myself from getting out of this, or I have no control in my life. Again, the perception very often is limiting or one-sided as to how can one act, react, or respond to whatever reality he or she is facing. An Italian poem says, as long as there is life, there is hope. So what is hope, right? Hope, much like a hopping rabbit, is from the same root, is when I essentially take jumps, not knowing exactly where I'm going to land. I'm just doing it with just the ideal that I would be landing safely, right? So that's hope. Yeah. So now the question is, when I dare to act and go into the unknown, am I doing it out of love or am I doing it out of fear? Right? Because what's behind the perception is very important. The why behind the what is extremely, extremely important. And why do you think that's that, Hurricane? Why do you think the why behind the what is so powerful in terms of the cause effect generated
Well,
from
cause
this?
and effect, right? You just said it. Cause and effect. It's the driver. It's what's going to motivate the outcome. I mean, it's
Right.
like everything else. I'm going to give an example. I can buy gas, right? Uh, so I can have safety and put my snow blower in gear,
Yes.
get ready for a snowstorm, or I can buy it for bad reasons. People buy drugs for medicinal purposes, or they can buy drugs for bad reasons. I mean, everything can be used two ways, and it's up to the consciousness and what your thoughts behind it, and what the intents are. That's going to drive how you're going to use them. The big debate these days, and it's been a big debate about weapons, right? And some people
Yes.
are for weapons, some people are not. You know, it's not the weapon. I mean, technically, that hurts is the people behind the weapon. You can
Yes,
use it as an
exactly.
enforcer, you can use it as a soldier, and you can use it as a thug. So it doesn't
Yes.
matter. It's really how you choose to use everything, right? And it's a
Yes.
you can use media correctly. You can use it bad. You can use a
Right.
book bad to influence people. You can use religion good or bad. You know,
Right.
so
And
it's
yeah.
crazy. Well, I hope I
Yeah.
answered the question, but
Yeah, sure. So it's important because that very perception you're talking about can make one act or not act, at least from the concept of fear. So, for example, let's say in states like Arizona and Texas, where they have concealed carry permissions, one who wants to rob some old lady of her little purse and money will kind of be more hesitant because that little old lady may have a little pistol there and shoot him. And just the
I've seen those. They're cute.
yeah, just the perception because of the concealed carry status of the community that that individual may be in possession of the weapon is a strong enough deterrent for individuals to go and victimize civilians, that they would have no such reservation in more restrictive states when it comes to citizens being able to defend themselves. I'm going back to your analogy about the weapon. What is a weapon? A weapon is nothing until I give it meaning, right?
Exactly. Well, even I mean, it's funny about weapons too. So I had a while back. I took a course, in New York, about safety for in the gun range and all this stuff. And one of the rules, so they asked the question, what is the safety of a gun? And most people, well, it's really the little thing that you press to make sure that the gun doesn't go off. But really, the true definition that they give you is that it's a mechanical device that actually can go wrong or can break. So it's really not the safety that is going to make the gun safe. It's you that going to know, and your behavior around the gun that's going to make safe. So when they do teach those things, I mean, it kind of clicks a little bit to understand what it is. And when you think about it, a lot of people that actually would never use the gun the wrong way. And again, it's people mention why are you choosing the gun as an example, but that's a big topic that's been discussed all over, and it can have bad ramifications.
Right.
Depends on the intent. But the idea is, when you think about how many people may have permits versus the ones that don't, and how many of those that have permits have acted in the wrong way versus the ones that use illegal weapons or guns or whatever, then you'll see exactly what we're discussing here. It's really the intent. Someone that understands what they have will probably, I mean, accidents happen, and sometimes stupidity takes place, but you can't always be right about everything. And we're talking the example of the weapons. We can talk about anything. You
Right.
can take a couple of pills and hurt your body, or you can take one pill as subscribed or prescribed rather, and you'll be good. We can
Exactly.
give analogies left and right here. So, but
Right.
it's the concept.
Right. And what happens then, the question is if the facts were actually traumatic, right? We talk about individuals who were into combat. We talk about individuals who are abused, who are being abused. So then what kind of interpretation can one give it? In moving away from the learned helplessness aspect, one can decide to dare to live, can decide to dare to respect himself or herself. It's kind of hard when the mirror in which an individual looks is being sort of like a carnival mirror, right? Coney Island mirror that makes one looks 4 feet 1, even if he or she is 6 feet 2. And if that's all they have looked at themselves in, that kind of distorting mirror, we would call that experiences of the past in an individual growing up. They are going to only believe that they are 4 feet 1 unless they change the mirror, unless they change that perspective. That is very important to understand, that the facts in and of themselves are neutral until one gives it meaning. And that's a very well-known concept with batterers that I have conducted groups and individual counseling with. They will try through grooming or seduction, through coercion, or through outright physical threats and actions to manipulate into learned helplessness and submission a lot of victims, and they strike out most of the times. So it's a numbers game for them, and they would say in therapy quite openly that for them it was a numbers game. All they needed to do is to find the individual women, let's say, could be children, who would be already prepped, if you will, in terms of
Accepted.
feeling, yeah, exactly, so that they could look at this reality that was being offered by a would-be woman batterer or child batterer or such, as something that is quote unquote normal, because that's how they grew up.
So someone would not react to them, would not. And by the way, it's a great example. It's an example that I can relate to from a martial arts perspective. I actually give some advice when we train, and I've learned this over the years with some real, martial artists, and I'm talking about some real good, experienced ones, about when you look at people aggressing, or being aggressive in the street or attacking people and things like aggressors, they choose their victims, the prey, and they're not going to attack or go against someone that they think might fight them back. They're going to look at that weak little, person that looks like really this is the one. I'm just going to take this one and do whatever I need, whether it's abusing, whatever it is, stealing, beating, even, killing, God forbid. So all those things, and that's really what it is. It's a matter of how they choose their people. But if you are deterring them, you mentioned earlier about the little lady with the little gun in Texas, you're not going to mess with someone like that because you think that she might be, but you might think that she's not, and obviously take a chance, and now that can turn out really bad for you.
Yeah,
So it's crazy, but you're right. I mean, it's people have these tendencies, and they find people that feed into them, and they'll really give them what they need. And I've always wondered that, like, even you and I, we had the joke the other day. We're talking about the movies, and when we talk about either tragic movies in terms of like disaster movies, that kind of thing, or war movies, and we talked about like how you use that in training in terms of like decision making and fight or flight, that kind of thing. But then when you think about it, we all can be in a position where we have to think about what's the reaction. And then sometimes
yeah,
I watch somebody and I'm like, why did they not behave? Why would someone allow someone to be just beating on them without even doing something about it? If someone's gonna hurt you, right? You got to defend yourself. It doesn't matter if you trained, you're not. I mean, your reality is that you have to do something. If they're gonna take advantage of you, well, you can't just allow them. And really, that's self defense, right? So
yeah,
again, I'm always reverting back to the self defense concepts here, but the idea is really people are gonna find someone unless they can find someone that's gonna react to them, and
yeah,
that's and either way, it's there's a cause and effect. It just who's gonna win here depends on the party involved in the deal here. So
yes.
again, I'm not sure if I'm relating exactly to what you
Yeah,
probably.
yeah, absolutely. Because what we are talking about is an action or inaction, which is based on feelings leading in one direction or another, which are based on the interpretation of the situation by the individual. It's not the situation in and of itself, it's the how the individual looks at it. That interpretation or misinterpretation is powerful, even to the point where if somebody has absolutely no chance to win, very often um, he or she may at least put up a good battle, and in so doing may intimidate and at least diminish the damage, and or even save his or her life. So let me give you an example. If some child or some woman is kidnapped, let's say from a parking lot, the kidnapper will be saying, listen, be quiet and nothing is going to happen to you. If the kidnapped person is actually fighting and screaming and messing with the wheels of the kidnapper and opening the door and jumping because he or she knows that at this point fighting, even if she may not win, even if she or he may die in the process by throwing themselves from the car, at least they fought. So very often these aggressors are really cowards. So when confronted with opposition, they may actually drop the whole thing. There were, for a lack of a better term, ironic cases where because the kidnapped man or woman by a would-be rapist thought that individual couldn't have an erection and therefore couldn't go ahead with the actual raping. We have the example of little dogs, tiny little things that are barking away and scaring away individuals such as you and I, or there were some cases where they even scared away bears from their turf, who had come to maybe go into the garbage and have some sort of treat. So the fighting is important. The fighting, however, the action is preceded by how one feels and interprets the reality. That's why it's important.
You know, it's funny that you're saying that, and so I'm relating back to a couple of concepts of martial arts here, but one of them being ki. So we all see this in the movies when the karate person or any martial artist, they make that big noise, you're making that big scare, but really there's a concept behind it. It's a deterrent. I mean, the first thing is intimidating, and the second is deterrent. It's the same thing as a roar. You know, that's
Yeah,
what it does.
yeah,
Not only it startles people, but it does that. And to the same effect, there's another technique that is used, and anyone that's listened, I mean, it's a good thing. It may save your life, but what it does is it helps you. So if you have to fight, that's another thing. I mean, you cannot get in trouble. I mean, technically, you fight, you get in trouble. So there's two things here. You're gonna get hurt. You can hurt someone, and you end up dead or in jail or something. Like we always say, that's the problem. So there's no win in a fight. But if you have no choice, and you have to, when you have people that are around you and aggressing, and they really they want to take advantage of you, you're gonna do something about it. So the first thing, especially if you know how to handle the situation, you also have to justify that whatever you're gonna take care of is not gonna be against you. So from a law enforcement, if you break somebody's leg and arm, whatever, from a defense, you know, you can be liable for that. So one of the things that is a technique that is used is you have to make a scene. And the scene is you have to go really like crazy. Oh my God, I don't want to fight. No, I'm sorry, you know, blah, blah. And then you're getting the attention of everybody as witnesses. So everybody's going to say, well, this person was not really doing it. They were the ones. And you build a case. Not only you build a case, you also start with the person. And by that time, you can take a quick, you know, a spin on things, and life, everything ends in literally a couple of seconds. But those are simple things that do make a difference. And you're right. If you do that little extra, making noise, doing anything. Listen, I always say this as a rule. If someone is willing to hurt me, you know, there's no reason for me not to be able to be willing to defend myself and hurt them back if I have no choice. You know, or if
yes,
I can prevent it, I can. But at the end of the day, if they already got given themselves permission to do that, what are you gonna do? I mean,
yeah,
if they're gonna hurt you bad, they're gonna hurt you regardless. But you're not going, as we say, you don't go without a fight.
yeah,
So
exactly.
and it works. But you, in your case and your experience with folks, you have seen that as a true validated, you know, piece, and people
Yeah,
have committed to it. So
yeah,
it's pretty deep stuff.
yes. Let me give you a more banal example in the same vein. Um, let's say I'm helping a client. A client comes to me and says, listen, for one reason or another, I received several overpayments from the Social Security Administration. Now, SSA wants the money back.
Hmm.
What are my, what
Options.
shall I do? Okay. More often than not, people don't even come to us trying to get advocacy. They just go into it, okay, chin down, guilty as charged, let me just pay for the damn thing, and that's it. That's because they have learned helplessness. If somebody dares to fight, even if they may not win, uh, there are at least 4 steps of recourse within the Social Security Administration and outside it, in 2 different courts, one state, one federal. Number one. Number two, very often the Social Security Administration, once the charge was made, they will start to collect and garnish checks and all kinds of things to start to collect money. That hurricane is illegal because according to the Social Security Administration's own rules and regulations, if an individual has a pending, is at a pending stage of a recourse at any point or another, the Social Security Administrations, by its own POMs or regulations, they have to stop collecting anything. Yet they go ahead and they quote unquote dare to take the money, even if they know full well that the individual is the appeals process. Those who A, dare to ask, B, dare to know, because it's important to know one's rights, and C, get through the process, the motions of actually completing the papers and or getting assistance and such. Guess what? They file for the appeals. They have to request from the Social Security administrations to honor their own regulations in terms of stopping any garnishment of from their salaries and or tax returns and such. They have to fight. So the moral of the story, and then the Social Security Administration eventually relents until a decision is made by an administrative law judge or even further above him or her. The point is that just because one has rights and one has an avenue of escape and one has an avenue to find freedom and or respect and or abundance, if he or she doesn't know the rights, B, if he or she doesn't dare to implement in that regard, and then it's a moot point really, because what good are rights and the possibilities to escape an oppressive situation if the individual doesn't dare? And it's amazing because this learned helplessness system is so pervasive and insidious that it makes people waste the most important commodity in their lives, which is the time in their lives, in stagnating or even regressing. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, you're right. And to your point, I mean, people have really taken this posture or position of like, I can't help it. You know, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do. But they don't even take a minute to actually take action or steps or even learn about what it is. You were talking about Social Security. I mean, I one of my core business that I do on a day-to-day basis working with seniors. And, you know, in the healthcare field, I mean, there's appeals and so on and so forth. We deal with a lot of folks that are on Social Security, and you're right, there's a lot of protocols and procedures, but some people may not know. And again, or if they know, they're afraid to take action because they're still going to worry about the outcomes. And but what are you going to lose?
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing to lose.
Exactly.
I mean, this goes to in all different industries. I mean, if you have a debt, and you know people are trying the banks and whatever loans, there are ways you can stop from them going crazy after you. And there's so many things, and they are expert in these matters. But you got to seek the system. You know, you got to find the ways to take action, but don't just claim that. Again, we're talking about the ostrich effect. Oh, it's I'm good. I don't want to do anything. And that's it. No, you take action. You do your part. You do your part. That's it. You take the steps that are necessary. The outcome may or may come your way or not your way, but it doesn't matter. You just have to do what's necessary to take steps and see what happens. Even it's a 50-50 shot. I'll take that anytime.
Absolutely. And here is the important thing based on the interpretation that I have of the, if you will, hurdles in my life. Am I going to fight this out of love, or am I going to fight this out of fear? Because it makes a whole experience in the former case of an enjoyable experience, a fulfilling experience, an enthusiastic experience, whereas doing the same thing, mind you, or am I going to do this out of fear, which is going to generate anger and constriction and so forth? So it's important that when I fight, I find reasons to do it out of love. It's extremely important. People say, well, it doesn't matter, the end result matter. Well, there is such a thing as the experience of the journey to the destination. Yeah. So based on fear or anger or love, we have three ways to look at ourselves. The one that is related to low self-esteem is just that, low self-esteem, learned helplessness, also known as the passive mode, which allows for demeaning by others and or by ourselves, right? We have cases of individuals who ingest toxic substances, hurt themselves, bulimia, anorexia, you name it, gamble. They do things that destroys their lives. Mm-hmm. The individuals who are the aggressors and who are aggressors because they are afraid that they may not have anybody to abuse. So the abusers are actually cowards. The abusers are actually afraid of not having any host on which to be and from which to be parasites. These individuals have high self-esteem. So what is high self-esteem? Also known as aggressive. It's selfish behavior, including demeaning others. Now, the ideal for the individual, when he or she finds reasons or interprets his or her reality out of love as opposed to out of fear and or anger, is what we call just self-esteem. No high, no low. So the question is, why is that? The low self-esteem is the passive. The high self-esteem is the aggressive. The self-esteem based individual is simply assertive. So he or she will be advocating for self and others in an ethical fashion. So for people to do that, um, going away from the religious morality, which is based on fear, and going into the spiritual morality behind it, which is based on love, then the self-esteem individual will have a sort of barometer inside him, hurricane, that will tell him, okay, I have so much power now, I need to check myself and make sure that the other individual is not going to suffer because of my being at the point where I could take advantage, and vice versa. And so it's very important to focus in doing whatever we are doing out of love, because that involves that I'm part of a salad bowl as opposed to being in a melting pot. So the salad bowl really says what? What do you think it means, Hurricane?
It's a mixture of things, but they're distinct.
They are distinct and then they are together at the same time. So therefore it means what? I have my own rights as an individual. That's the respect for self. And the other ones have also, quote unquote, the right to be part in this salad bowl. Not just I, not just the tomatoes. So, though some people may like just tomato salad, that's their thing. The general rule is that all ingredients have a totality of individuality and also commonality with the world. So therefore, and that's actually the whole idea, right? Like the experiments that were made showing that we cannot just be the creators when in fact we didn't give ourselves a life or happiness or anything. We cannot create anything by ourselves. There has to be our initiative, our hard work in conjunction with outside factors. So therefore we are together. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, I agree. I completely agree. I mean, well, to just to add to that, I mean, the concept of we all have to have a balance and know when to stop. And that's the other thing. It's there is always a point where if you go beyond it, and we've seen that. I mean, we see that in some reaction when people they take it to the next level where they don't have to. Like why? I mean, we talked about law enforcement. We talk about excessive force. We talk about thugs. We talk about all kinds of stuff. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you are, what you do. If you do it correctly in due measure, and you can balance the good, the bad, and you always outweigh the things. And if you can back off sometimes, even when you have the upper hand, you can stop. I mean, we have that concept in martial arts. I mean, if you don't have to brutal, somebody and really go, and break them. If you don't have to, you can just subdue someone and tell them, hey, listen, you got the lesson, stop it, right? Or you can go to the extent and just do damage, and then now you're liable because you did not stop. So, and again, relate to something that is dear to my heart. But at the end of the day, it's really that stuff. It's like discipline, right? You can discipline, or you can abuse.
Yeah. You can discipline or you can abuse. This is very powerful.
Exactly. So you can discipline, and it doesn't have to go crazy, which a lot of the older generation had experience in terms of discipline. And today I'm not going to go over that. That topic is a little touchy, but I'm not talking about corporal, type of discipline, but I'm talking in general. I mean, anyone that grew up in the 70s, maybe even early 80s or before that, it was a different type of discipline anywhere. There was no like I got this, nobody's gonna talk to me. There was consequences if you took any bad action, right? At home, at school, in the street, doesn't matter where you. Today people get away with things, right? And so people don't know what's discipline anymore because they just know, well, What are you going to do about it? Huh? So they challenge everything, and that's really the reaction that you hear these days, right? But that's the difference. But then you have the abuse. You know, you go the extreme and you go beyond what you needed. So there is the point of no return, and when you get to that point, it's too late. And at that point, and that's really what happens when people wind up in jail and wind up dead or in a bad situation, because from a discussion, it escalates. The next thing, it becomes physical. The next thing, people go to the extent, and the balance is lost, and you have all these other powers that take place, and that's it. So to your question and to the point you're making, I think you have to be, understanding that it's not about you; it's also about everybody else, and why you take advantage for you and make sure that you're righteous and you get your peace from whatever the situation is. Make sure that you don't go beyond that. It's just like justice, right? You want to just take your justice. Some people like, oh, it's fair or just, and some people want to do more. Like, for example, we hear this all the time. Somebody falls in a store. I mean, you trip. Now you got to sue the place because you want to make money, right? Not because the store didn't do anything, but because there is a law, because you can, because you will take it to that extent. But not everybody would do it. So some people will say, I'm sorry, it happened. I feel better. I'm good. Some people get in a fender bender and now they have like a lawsuit going on. Oh my God, my neck is broken, right? So
Yeah.
it's all about, to your point, about cause and effect, the actual training that they have, the upbringing, whatever the case is, the environment, things like that do make that happen or not happen.
Yeah. In the 1700s, William Law, an English priest, mystic, and writer, he stated something like this: man needs to be saved from his own wisdom as much as from his own righteousness, for they both produce one and the same corruption. So
Deep.
it's deep. And again, you think, well, if somebody's wise, then it's good, right? If he's right, he's good or she's good. Well, wisdom and righteousness without the benefit of being acted um, from the spirit of love and care um, and gentleness and or assertiveness from case to case, they produce the corruption of the power trips. And at this point, I'm detaching from anybody else. I'm on my own. And in so doing, I'm really in denial of reality because I cannot be on my own, can I?
Well, so you touched on another dear topic to myself and to my heart is, and I've given this example in the context of leadership. And people get a position, they get power, and it gets to their head, and they forget either where they came from and when they were at that stage, and they were looking up on other people, say, "Wow, they're behaving this way." And then when you get to that point, you became the opposite of what you actually hated, or you become exactly what you hated. All right. And sometimes it becomes where, like, I'm out of control because I got this perception of power, right?
Yeah,
And that's a very common thing that happens at work, in the workplace, in a lot of areas, right? So again, understanding that you are nothing without the others.
exactly.
Role. I mean, there's no such thing as a leader without people supporting them. Otherwise, you have nobody to lead. You'll be
Yeah,
a
yeah,
team
yeah,
with no people.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
um,
yeah, exactly. Am I doing what I'm doing out of love? People say, well, I'm doing it out of love for me and out of spite for the others. That's not how this thing works.
was
Be-
justifying the case for themselves.
yeah, because it's two different frequencies. It's the AM versus FM. And just like it's impossible to put two swords in the same sheet, right? It's either one or another. So it is impossible for me to nourish love towards my loved ones and then go outside the door and go and shoot people and hurt people. There is one category of individuals who are able to pull that stunt off, and those are the people without compassion, who are entirely, would call them sado or masochists or both, and they are acting strictly from the reptilian part of our brains, the one that is devoid of any compassion and the sense of really love. Those are a few, like what a few percentiles in the society, but they are there. Most of us just do it in denial of our own compassion and common sense and intuition, and that gets us in trouble because then it brings remorse at some point. And remorse really in Latin means being beaten again, right? So that's what remorse is.
Interesting. Well, listen, I mean, we can go on and on. There's a lot of deep stuff here, and we probably can connect this for the next topic, and just take it from there in terms of like where people have gone beyond and they need to come back. And sometimes it is too late. I think you and I, we talked about the example of somebody, you know, didn't realize what they did until it was too late. But at that point, it cost them years of their life to really, figure out that what the hell did I just do? And I would assume that a good 90% of all the people that weren't up in a bad place, they would think twice, like, what the hell? And by the way, I think any one of us, and this is actually a challenge to anyone that's listening or watching, think about this. If you were to go back in live, in a few years back, what would you change? And I guarantee you, we all can change a lot of things we did, in terms of like, you could have done this differently. You could have not hurt this person. You could have not done something that you probably regret at this point, but you did it. Whether it's a business decision, a personal decision, family decision. And again, it could be something bad that got you to a point where now it's like, oops, and you have to regret it for the rest of your life. So one little action without thinking, without stopping at the point, where you need to stop, gets us to where we are, it's too late. And so,
yeah, and this is where the process of forgiveness has to come in, and we can, without forgiveness, there is no closing of the wound of remorse, or and it stays open because I keep hating, and resenting. So the wound is open and stirred and irritated. Whereas forgiveness allows for me to let go of the desire to be right and focus on the heart, on the process of being in harmony. And thus an open wound, it will turn into a scar, whether it be physical or emotional. And with the scar, one can function in life. It's okay. It's there, but it doesn't hurt.
well, I think we're getting close to the end of the show, but to your point, the forgiveness part, it starts with the self, I think. I mean, first you got to forgive yourself for your actions and what you do, and then forgive others for anything they do. And sometimes it's okay. It doesn't hurt. Actually, when you forgive people, it's a good power. And the people that can experience that will literally relate to that expression. That is power. True power is when you forgive, when you can actually, you have control, but you can let go. You have control, and you can really say, I got this. I don't need to go beyond this. And that's
Excellent.
the power of the self and the esteem and really the highest level of humanity, I would say. But again, with I don't want to be the last one to end the show here. So Gabriel, any last wisdoms on this episode today, and then we can catch on the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you to the listeners. And we appreciate being part of your time in terms of brainstorming on these issues and possibly reflect on them. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gabriel, as usual. Gabriel Gherasim. Check out his book, Gracia Cantantes. It's a pretty deep book. By the way, I got my copy, and I'm reading it. I'm enjoying it. So you do the same if you can. Check it out. The link on the description of the show has the actual link to the book, and it is pretty cool stuff. So, and again, catch on the shows on the radio, on the site. If you have Roku, watch it there, or YouTube. But, follow the Gherasim Hour with us and get some insights and some deep stuff about psychology, about behavioral stuff. And while this is not my background, I try to dabble with him. I mean, he puts me all the time on the position when I had to get in, and I try. So I'm keeping up. Hopefully, I'm doing a good job. Let's see what I'm doing next time. But I try. But Gabriel, thank you. You're actually keeping me in check, and that's good.
Thank you. Likewise, it's a two-way system here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that being said, thank you for watching the iHealth channel and I listen on iHealth Radio. Gabriel Gherasim with us, the Gherasim Hour. We will talk to you in about a week or so. So stay tuned for the next one. It's going to be just as cool as deep in terms of conversation. So we'll talk soon. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.